find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on.
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. Judy, what's today's title?
Compassionate Divorce, an interview with Sarene Arias.
And we just finished that interview. That was really interesting.
Yeah, she's fascinating.
Yeah,
she's
really.
Very energetic and has great ideas.
Yep. And so that just, you probably already are thinking what compassionate divorce means, and you're probably right, largely. But she's got a lot of knowledge and goes into a lot of details and a lot of depth about it, and we had a great conversation.
Yes, we did.
So check that out. Just today, I just want to invite people to sign up for. You're signing up for, basically, you end up signing up for my newsletter, which you get the occasional missive from me. There's no spam or anything. And when you do that, you can get a free, what are we calling it? A relationship clarity assessment. It's really just a snippet of a much more in-depth exercise that is part of the video course and also part of the book that I just wrote, The Passion Paradox. So I want to just invite people to do that because that tool itself is very useful. Of course, what's in it for me? It leads people to check out some other stuff I've offered that actually I think is really very helpful stuff. So I just want to mention that briefly. I think we should also mention your book.
Yes, that would be
Is lying
The
around
Blue
somewhere.
Tent, Erotic Tales from the Bible by Laria Zilber.
There
So
it
if you're
is.
on video, you can see it.
Yep.
And if you're on audio, you can hear it.
Oh, and actually you can expand on that. If you're on audio, you can get the audio book, which
Yes,
Judy
which I have
narrated.
Yes.
And I better not start waxing too eloquent about that, or I'll get all excited. And that would not be appropriate at this moment. We're about to go into our
That's
interview.
right, we
aren't
are.
Yes.
So why don't we go
So
into our
let's go into our interview, and we'll see you on the other side.
Our guest today is Sarene Arias. Sarene is the author of Discovering Diamonds, a story of compassionate divorce. She has learned to make peace while finding love in the conflict-ridden Middle East. She is a certified integral therapist who works internationally with individuals and couples, helping them to feel vitally alive. Sarene, welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here and get to talk to
We're
both of
excited
you.
to have you.
We're delighted to have you. And we always like to start off with our guests saying, tell us something about your own journey. How'd you get into the work you do? Tell us whatever you'd like to tell us about that.
Yeah. In my day job, I do a body-based mode of basically trauma therapy. But my work with couples, it's really so resonant. Bruce, I was listening to a previous episode and hearing the way the two of you talk about intimacy, and it's basically synonymous with vitality. So in my day job, I work helping individuals to feel vitally alive.
Mm.
And the way that I came to write Discovering Diamonds and to integrate this work with couples in crisis into the big picture of what I do is because we really can't have that sense of passion, of vitality when we're not alive in our relationships. And the sad reality is that you know that works for lots of couples, and then for lots of couples they just find themselves stuck and stuck dead together instead of thriving together. And so that's how I came to write Discovering Diamonds and integrate the couples work into the big picture.
Yeah. So maybe we can ask you in terms of that book, Discovering Diamonds, the rest of the title, A Story of Compassionate Divorce,
Yeah,
which is kind of your shtick, right? Compassionate
that is
divorce.
my shtick. Yes.
Tell us about compassionate divorce. What does that mean?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I wrote Discovering Diamonds because I believe that the more that we are um, creating partnerships based on the agreement between equals, like the more society moves forward and the more that everybody is raised to believe that they are infinitely valuable and infinitely capable, and that adults like that choose to to love and maybe make it official with a legal document by getting married, that the longer we are forming relationships as equals, that we absolutely have to be able to approach the end of that relationship painful, hard, sad, that we have to be able to approach it like a transition, the kind of transitions that we go through in adult life that can, shake us to our core, but they are doable and navigatable. And so that's the essence of compassionate divorce. And so every time I talk about it, it's so important to me to say, like, I didn't invent this. I really sort of
Mhm.
feel like it can be obvious. It should be obvious. And the reason I put pen to paper to write the book is that it's just not yet the norm,
Right.
even though for all kinds of reasons we would hope that it would be. And so the book is part memoir, part personal story, and then part hands-on guide toolbox of how can couples decide to part ways without ruining the lives of everybody around them.
Mm.
Yeah, that's sometimes it's hard.
That's interesting. You said it ought to be obvious, and of course, with so many of the folks that I work with, it is obvious, but they don't know how to pull it off.
Right.
And well, we can
Well,
talk
there's a
about some
lot
of
of
that.
anger.
Yes, there's a
There's
lot of
a
anger
lot of
and a lot of
anger.
pain, a lot of trauma
Yeah,
often.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do we pull that off with the trauma, the anger, the pain, the angst?
Yeah. So I have a mindfulness background, and so there is a little bit of a mindfulness vibe to the tools component of the book.
Hmm.
And Bruce, I I sort of hope as an outcome of this conversation that we're gonna get to know each other, and then I'm gonna convince you that this is sort of the right after the last step in the passion paradox, that like this is the how to, right? This is the next step.
I will
So
throw in, by the way, you probably I don't know, probably haven't seen it, but I have actually in both the book form and I've just recently created a, video course form as
yeah,
well.
it's
The
great.
last chapter is called How to Split Up. And I hadn't, of course, read your book when I wrote that.
Right.
I would be really curious to hear your reaction because pretty much what I'm saying in there in different language is pretty much what you're writing about in the book. If you're going to split up, don't be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
Start from there.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff you're talking about
Hmm.
applies, I think.
That's
Very
great.
true.
Yeah. So no, we can compare notes and tips. But Judy, when you ask like how does a well-meaning adult keep their head when it when it when it hurts so much? Because that's what it comes down to, is that good people, when navigating the end of a marriage, especially if they have kids, especially if they've been together for a while, they can lose their minds. They lose their minds. They don't mean to, but they lose their minds. And so, you know, in the book, first, I try to make it clear that this road of compassionate divorce, it's not for everyone. Certainly, in cases of abuse, in cases of real asymmetry in terms of power dynamics, it might, like a person who had to sign a really hefty prenup at the begin on the at the in, like going in, maybe this isn't, this is a roadmap for people who can see one another as equals and who want to navigate the process of divorce from a place of respect. And then in terms of compassionate divorce as a method, I make some key suggestions about how to do it differently. So for example, I really encourage couples who can to consider their navigating their divorce as the last thing they do together, as opposed to the first thing that they do as adversaries. And
Mhm.
in that way, it is sort of a little bit, certainly folks who hire a lawyer that does collaborative divorce law, great, definitely, uh, resonant with that. Um, so that's the first piece, because I believe that that feeling of losing our minds, it has to do with like for most couples, even couples who have been very unhappy for a very long time, their partner is their primary attachment bond, and they're losing that bond as they are trying to navigate all of these very overwhelming questions. And so in compassionate divorce, the idea is to slow down, to tackle it as a team. And then, I lay out some like basic but really powerful, basically tools of conflict resolution to help folks to the goal in compassionate divorce is to separate emotional upheaval from decision making.
I
And
enjoyed your tool about ouch and oops. I thought that
yeah,
was a nice
yeah.
touch. You want to, if you want to throw that in, explain that.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So oops and ouch is it comes from the work of relationship recovery. So young people might have learned oops and ouch like in their college orientations, right? This is not something I made up.
Uh,
Um,
that was before my time.
yeah.
Or
Um,
after my time, I
After your
should say.
time.
Yes, right. Yeah.
yeah, no, and actually this reminds me also to something that I heard one of you say in a earlier episode where you were saying that you were talking about small annoyances and that
Mhm.
when the emotional bank is empty, when the goodwill bank is on empty, then
Mhm.
little things that in a healthy dynamic relationship they should roll off the back. All of a
Right.
sudden the assumption becomes that they're malicious with intent.
Mhm.
You're doing this at my expense. You're doing this
Right.
to
You're
hurt
like
me
everything you do annoys me, and you're
Yeah.
doing it on purpose to
Well,
annoy me.
and
on purpose. Yeah, you're doing
yeah,
it
on
because I.
purpose. And it's just further evidence of how bad things are, as
Yeah,
opposed to when things are going well, it's just sort of silly and funny.
right,
Or
right.
maybe a little annoying, but no big deal. Yeah.
Right. So oops and ouch is meant to just stop all of that in its tracks. In Discovering Diamonds, I talk about that in the context of Harville Hendricks's work and the power struggle. So even divorcing couples can still find themselves inside of power struggle dynamics.
Oh yeah.
And that being bothering to fight, I actually think is a wonderful indication of care, right? Like when we don't
Mhm.
care, like why bother, right?
Hmm.
But so in supporting couples to navigate compassionate divorce, what they need to understand is that if they have made the decision, and we do have folks that kind of turn back midway, that they get to a point in the process and they realize, no, we want to, we want to try again, we want to heal, and that's fantastic, right? But for those couples who are going to walk the road of compassionate divorce to it till its end, because they are choosing to part ways, they are choosing to lay the power struggle to rest. And what that means is that when triggering happens, we need to stop in its tracks, and we do it with one of two ways. First, if you do something that hurts me, we don't have to get into it. I don't need to criticize you. We don't need to psychoanalyze it. I just need to say ouch. You just did something that hurts, and I'm going to say ouch, and we're going to hold right there. And again, compassionate divorce happens within the context of a contract. We've agreed, me and my partner, we've agreed we're doing this together. So I say oops, and part of the contract is that when they hear oops,
We're gonna
they
hear ouch.
sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
When they hear ouch, thank you. When they
Yes.
hear ouch, they take me for my word and they stop and they realize, wait a minute, I just did something that was hurtful to you. And the partner of oops is ouch. Partner of ouch is oops, taking
Hmm.
responsibility. It wasn't my intent to hurt you. But again, this is one of those skills really constructive, in the course of a fight, but the context is different in compassionate divorce versus partners who want to keep loving each other and want to get to a point of resolution.
Yeah. Yeah.
The stakes are higher there. Whereas in compassionate divorce, what we're trying to do is just help people to keep, get back to that level-headed goodwill place so we can make the series of decisions because
Now,
the
it reminds me, and I don't know if I'm overstretching my my favorite terms to fit this, but we talk a lot about stability and intimacy. That's kind of part of my shtick, and how
uh-huh.
they're both important. And I had in one of my books, I actually distinguished between using a couples therapist versus a mediator, because
Uh-huh.
mediators are all about stability
Mm-hmm.
and not so worried about intimacy. Couples
Mm-hmm.
therapists are all about intimacy and
Mm-hmm.
also stability, ideally. But
Uh-huh.
what you're doing when you made the decision to divorce, it's so interesting as you describe and you put out the contract. You mentioned the contract in your book. That's the kind of thing you can agree to if you really agreed to divorce. Where I
Right.
would think it would be, and I imagine you've seen this, really hard is if only one of the two is absolutely sure they want a divorce and the other isn't.
Yeah.
Oh boy, because they're not in a position to be able to say, we're just going to not go for, intimacy to work out how, what the ouch was about, or even
Right.
what the oops is about, is a very
Right.
intimate process. To just be able
Yeah.
to say, no, we are using ouch and oops as a way of saying, oh, we don't have to do this now, do we? And
Right.
so a couple that's made that decision could do that. A couple that hasn't, boy, that would be very difficult to pull off, I would think.
Right. And that's really why it's just essential that the first step of the process is, getting to a point where you decide as a team that you're doing this and you're doing
Mhm.
this way. Because, that first piece of the definition of compassionate divorce, of tackling divorce as a team, it really that's where what you're saying, Bruce, really comes in. Because if we've agreed to tackle this as a team, then on some level, that choice is based on whether, you know, at the end of a marriage, the weight that people are carrying on their hearts is really very, very heavy. It really is.
Hmm.
Um, and and yet the reality is that we know our partners very well, very, very well. And so what you're describing, Bruce, in terms of how, just if people feel differently about wanting it, just that asymmetry, once we've decided to tackle divorce as a team, I'm agreeing on a certain level to acknowledge that this is where you're at. That maybe
Mhm.
my level of clarity is at a 9 and yours is at a 6, and your level of heartbreak is at a 9 and mine is at a 6. And that just becomes part of the reality of what we have to navigate. And so
Mhm.
the way that then comes in, both, another key tool in the compassionate divorce toolbox is patience.
Mhm.
That's where people are going to need different amounts of time. If the commitment is to separate emotional upheaval from decision making, people need different amounts of time to get to a
Yeah.
place where they can get clear-headed about a decision. And therapy definitely plays a role sometimes in order to do this kind of proactive, kind-hearted process. You really need to have a great therapist, or have a great best friend that you can be crying to, right? There is a lot. It's a heavy emotional burden, but
Mhm.
a real, you know, we can talk about the place of kids in divorce, in staying for the kids, in compassionate divorce. So so compassionate divorce is a heavy lift, or the metaphor I use in the book is that it's surgery with a scalpel, not a
Mhm.
hatchet. It's more
Yep.
delicate and it is hard, but we do that hard work both to prevent the collateral damage of the way that, really volatile divorces are just like a huge explosion, and there's a
Hmm.
huge blast radius all the way around it in terms of extended families, certainly kids. And we do it also as an investment in doing the process well now, because contentious divorce, fundamentally, it's a traumatic event that then needs to be processed and healed from after the fact. And so we do
Mhm.
the hard work in it.
Let's talk a little bit about children and child rearing and where that falls into when you're going through this, compassionate type of divorce. How
Yeah.
does, I'm sure there's like a whole gamut of problems that come along with this. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is a piece that I share my personal story in the book. I myself am a product of staying for the kids. My parents divorced within 12 months of when I left the house. And I grew up in a miserable home.
Mhm.
My parents are good people. They're still friends. My mom is, good friends with my dad's second wife, right? Like it's all like they are good people, and yet in the house their seemingly noble intention to stay for the kids had real negative consequences, to the point where I basically exited childhood with no modeling for healthy relationships. I
Yeah.
had
Mhm. Yeah.
all kinds of other modeling going on that wasn't that. And so that definitely was, when I was facing the end of my marriage, it was really important to me not to make that mistake that I feel that my parents made. Um, and kids pay a high price when families change shape. They do.
Mm.
And so it's certainly, and the research shows this too, that kids' needs, it's really different what kids at certain developmental stages need from what older kids, for example, need. Um, and so one of the things I love most about the compassionate divorce process and the way we coach folks to do it is that, we take the definition that a family is it's a constellation of people who are committed to the well-being of one another
Mm.
and all of the members. And so if we're talking about parents and kids, then it's every member of the family. And every member of the family has wants and needs. Every member of the family is being affected by the transition. And we really work to take into account the needs of every member of the family as we move through the decision making. And so that's where compassionate divorce and certainly some of the ideas in Discovering Diamonds can be pretty unconventional. So like for example, in my personal story, um, we did two different rounds of nesting, meaning
Mm.
very early on in our process, and then later, many years later, where we chose nesting is now I hope becoming more well known. I understand it's the default custody recommendation in the state of New Jersey. I've been told.
I
Um,
did not know that. Wow, that's
yeah,
interesting.
so I could be wrong about that, but
Why
that's
don't you
certainly
tell us what nesting is?
yes.
Oh yeah,
So
you've heard of it though.
nesting or bird nesting
Yeah.
is a living arrangement in the context of divorce, where rather than the divorcing adults moving into two separate homes and asking the kids to move between, you rather establish the first that the children's residence is the nest, and they
Hmm.
stay put. And then adults, um, based on the custody schedule that they agree to, move in order to come in and out of the nest.
Mm.
So it's a perfect example of sort of the ways that compassionate divorce is a heavier lift, but the adults choose to take on that burden, in this case, for the sake of the kids. Um, so yeah, so in my personal story, we did two different rounds where right when we first split up, we decided, we're splitting, but the kids are gonna stay in the house that they had been living in, and we moved around them. And then many years later, after the kids had been going between two houses, there was like a series of changes in various people's lives, and we did it again for another year.
Mm.
Um, I forget how we got onto that. So in terms of the kids and the needs of the kids, where I will say that it's particularly challenging, but I think that this challenge, and actually, Bruce, I'm sure you see this too in your practice. I think it's particularly challenging with special needs kids. So,
Hmm.
kids who have special needs, either kids on the spectrum, kids who are struggling with anxiety and depression. So, divorce is particularly destabilizing for kids who are special needs kids. But what I found in my work is that to the same degree that many couples who are navigating the challenges of raising and loving a special needs child, that those challenges they're deep in the story of the breakdown of the relationship too. And so
Mhm.
it is particularly challenging there. Oh, I remember what I was saying. Um, um, and but we just bring the same principles that we want to just look really granular. What are the needs, for example, let's say of that high anxiety kid, what are the ways that we can consult experts to get
Hmm.
good expert advice, right? Because that with every step of the process, because what we're trying to do is keep our heads, we want to be sorting between what are the things I can handle, and then what are the questions that put me to a place of overwhelm. And where there's overwhelm, you know what? Like I can ask for help. I can
Mm.
ask for help.
Yeah.
I can seek the advice of an expert because I don't need to know. What I need to do is keep my head. And so, um, I was talking
It sounds good a lot on paper, but let's say you've got the special needs kid. You
about.
got mom and dad that want to help the kid, but mom and dad have very different opinions on how to help that child and what
Yeah.
help to get for that child. You know, I'm a
Were you listening into my session the other day with a couple? That's
no, but I'm a former educator. I'm a retired
Yeah.
educator. So, you know, you come across these things where you see the different parenting styles
Yeah.
and what mom wants to do for the kid and what dad wants to do.
Absolutely. Yes.
Don't always agree. And so when you're going through a divorce, you know, you got the power dynamic that you just can't help it. My way's better than his way, you know, that type of thing. So how do you help a couple through that?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's so, so difficult. So we have a line of workbooks and including like in the workbook for parents of kids with special needs. So for, one of the another piece of um the agreements that we make in compassionate divorce, because one of the things that I think is takes some time for folks to wrap their heads around is that in the context of marriage, we engage in subtle forms of negotiation all the time.
Mhm.
But in choosing to divorce and to do it cleanly, part of my agreement, part of what I'm conceding in the compassionate divorce process is that actually, in choosing to divorce you, I'm going to have no influence over you anymore. I am going to go back to seeing you as a separate individual who is worthy of my respect. And so Judy, along the lines of what you're saying, so you have your parenting views and I have my parenting views. And so one of the things that we do in the process is we want to come to some key agreements. So for example, a kid, a special needs kid that, the psychologist has been clear that screen use affects mental health. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's a good example that if we're not on the same page about screen time limitations in the two different houses, that kid is gonna have all kinds of spiral effects. And so that's the kind of thing that we would negotiate down into that granular in the compassionate divorce process to say that for the sake of this child's well-being, we must be on the same page for these two things. What I hear in your question is how, I like what you're describing is part of how it is that these particularly high challenging situations eat away at the health of at the health of and integrity of a couple and how much support those couples needs in terms of
Right.
staying married. Now, not for me, but
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
making it work, it's hard. It is really
Mhm.
hard. Let me just finish the thought from two waves ago. So, there are some pretty unconventional suggestions in compassionate divorce. So,
Mm.
once we create the kind of wide, wide space for, the top goal is well-being, and the couple has agreed that their well-being for the two of them is really supported by no longer being a couple. So, in this type of scenario that we're describing, a special needs kid who just cannot move between settings, they need the consistency. This is my room. This is my desk. This is my lovey. So that family certainly nesting, but that family in the context of compassionate divorce, and this has been a really fascinating outcome from the folks who read the earliest drafts of the book. Um, and there are folks who their finish line ends up being separation for a period of time. And that's the finish line that they determine, meaning even this scenario that Judy that you're asking about, like I could coach a couple even to be separated in the same house. Be
Mm.
only if they had of full sound mind chosen that was what was right for them for a discrete period of time.
Mhm.
So that's the reversal in this approach. That what we say is that we, everybody here, all the adults here are adults who can take care of themselves, who deserve to be healthy and happy, and that we as a family we decided to make this family together. We're going to work as a team to continue to take care of the needs of every member of the family. And we're basically going to throw everything else out in terms of those assumptions about the way the finish line has to look.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a way of it just occurred to me, a way of sort of understanding the whole conceptual set you've got. That if you think about, because I'm often telling folks, I work with a lot of couples who are in the process of splitting up, as well as couples who are trying to figure it out, and lots of couples, of course, who want to stay together, or they're not thinking about splitting up, but they just want things to go better. I'm a couples therapist, right? So in the context of that, I'm thinking about the people who split up and have these awful divorces. And I've worked with some couples trying to work out their awful divorce. They've
Mhm.
already divorced. But what you're doing in a sense, what you could say, what you're doing is coaching people so that they can skip that awful stuff. They can,
Hopefully, that's
because,
absolutely, yes,
yeah,
yes,
because
absolutely.
interestingly, I so often am mentioning to people, even if it's awful, even if they're doing all the wrong things, whatever one considers the wrong things, and most of them kind of know what the wrong things are, but they're doing them anyway.
Mhm.
They're complaining about each other to the kids, and all the stuff you're not supposed to do. A lot of people are doing because they're panicking. Even then, they often, you fast forward a couple of years later, we in our extended families, I won't get into details, but we even know of a situation like that involving somebody we know, one of our kids is married to. Um, where it was awful, but now they're
Yeah,
friends. It works out fine. And what you're doing is you're saying, what if we resolve in the beginning to not go through the awful part? Let's work on it so we don't have to go through the awful part. Of course, which is why you say in the book, this isn't for everybody.
yeah,
Because a lot of people, it's one of those paradoxes, and I've noted that too. When I was reading your book, I noted that one of the paradoxes about writing coming to agreements like you're talking about is, for some people, if they can come to those agreements, they don't need the process. And
right.
if they can't come to those agreements, the process isn't going to help them.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
No, as I said at the beginning, I hope like this is a piece of work. Please God, one day it becomes irrelevant. Absolutely. That we should live in a world where it's not necessary. But I think the reason that so yes, so the criteria that I use in the book is hatred. I
Mhm.
think I remember when I first started telling folks about my divorce, that kind of like doe-eyed look and like, but don't you love each other? And I just think it's the wrong question. I
Mhm.
just think
Hmm.
it's the wrong question. I think that, in the context of couples counseling, there are many other much more effective questions in terms of helping the couple to heal. But in terms of choosing the path of compassionate divorce, I think what matters is hatred.
Mhm. Lack
For
thereof, basically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but I think that you can talk to some folks and they've gotten to a point where the degree of deep neglect, either of themselves or of having their needs met in the relationship, or certainly in the cases of abuse or
Hmm.
extreme betrayal, um, that they've really gone from love to hate.
Mhm.
And hatred is insidious. And once there is hatred, then, we're human. And once there is hatred, there's objectification and people get vindictive.
Yeah.
And it can be really ugly and it can spiral out. And so, in that kind of context, I do encourage folks to just get divorced as quickly as possible. And then that's not going to be with compassionate divorce.
Yeah.
Um, but
Which is not to say maybe down the line they can then heal to the point
hopefully,
where they can
yes,
have.
absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yes,
it
yes,
occurs
yes,
to me
yes.
to ask you, by the way, in this, you want to explain diamond
Sure,
shaped family. That's
yeah.
a beautiful,
I
that's a cool,
know, I
especially
know. I
because of
still
where it came
cry when I
from.
read that, when I do readings and read that section.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was my son, who's now much older because this my marriage ended more than 10 years ago now. But my young son coined the term, because he was talking about diamond as a shape. I have two kids, and so when my ex and I told the kids that we were splitting up, he thought about it and he said, now. our family used to be a square, but now you two are moving further apart, and so now our family is a diamond.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just say he's a
Wow.
really special one. Um, and but the reason the book is called Discovering Diamonds is because I actually love the metaphor of the precious stone
Hmm.
diamond. It didn't occur to me till way later, like engagement rings, all that stuff. Really was like, oh, I guess, you know.
Hmm.
But I just love that metaphor that a diamond is coal forged under tremendous pressure,
Mhm.
and it creates something very beautiful. And I do, if we were talking in the beginning of our conversation about that heavy lift and that it's a longer road and it does require a degree of emotional resilience from the adults who choose to walk it. Um, but the result is something very, very beautiful. And I can say that about my family. I still like we are still one family, even though we split up 10 years ago. Um, and it's not conventional, but it's very beautiful and it's much happier and healthier than it was when we were married, when my ex and I were married. And it's much more stable and much more honest this way.
Mhm. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can people get in touch with you, and what sort of things do you offer to folks?
Yeah, thank you. So my thing is compassionate divorce. So compassionate-divorce.com, lots of free resources there. And then I myself facilitate workshops for couples in crisis. So those are called Diamond Workshops. So I'm still like that. The folks who come now get to come for free because we're still, getting the recipe just right. But starting about a year from now, like that's when we have a full lineup that once a month. And so Diamond Workshops are for couples who feel stuck and hopeless. And the goal of Diamond Workshops is really 50-50. And that's why I love getting to meet, make new friends who are couples therapists, because
Mhm.
the goal is really 50-50, that half the folks who come through come out with some great skills and having dropped back in to that conviction to keep growing together and healing. And if that's not where you end the day, then you end the day choosing to hopefully choosing to commit to walking the path of compassionate divorce. But no, the best place to start, first of all, read the book Discovering Diamonds: A
Mhm.
Story of Compassionate Divorce, and feel free to reach out. And then lots of free resources, workbooks, whatnot at compassionate-divorce.com.
Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for
It's
having
nice
me.
to
Real
have you.
pleasure to meet both of you.
Great to meet you too.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Sarene.
Indeed, I hope you did. We certainly did.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to put in another plug for, well, gee, let's tell people what our website is, those who are not watching the video and seeing it floating above our heads.
Yes, so if you're listening, it is ctin7.com. That's CT as in couples therapy, IN numeral 7.com.
Yes, so when you go there, one of the things you can do, among other things, one of the things you can do is sign up for what I think we're calling a free relationship clarity check, which really is a way that will get you onto my my email list, and you'll get some good stuff on that, and not super frequent, and I'm not going to spam you, and I'm not going to give it to anybody else.
But that checklist, that assessment, it really gets you thinking about your relationship. So even if you don't do anything else, it's very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. So do that. And of course, buy our books, and I've got some video courses out you can check out and all that kind of stuff. Do check that out.
Good stuff.
And moreover, let us know if you want us to cover any particular topics.
Right.
Or
if you have questions, or if you yourself would like to be on our podcast, you too can be on our podcast. So you can sign up at ctin7.com, and we have a Calendly link, and tell us what you want to talk about. And I'll bet if you're listening to a couples therapy podcast, it's got to be couples therapy related. So you just could be one of our guests.
I'll even extend it couples related, not even necessarily therapy related. But,
That's true. Yeah, couples
anything
related.
about couples. Yeah.
And it could also be like family members.
Oh, exactly.
Doesn't
yeah.
only have to be couples.
Yeah, relationships related. I mean, we could extend that to include virtually anything.
Yes, we can.
And we, in this is episode, I forgot the exact number, but it's in 200, I think it's close to 240. This might be 240, maybe 239. Anyway, you can look at that, folks, when you did this, when you clicked on this episode. But we've done a lot of them, and we've covered a lot of territory.
We sure have.
We're still having fun. And what's that song? We're still having fun, and you're still the one. There we are. So, on that note, remember, until next time,
remember, be kind.
Don't panic.
And have faith.